Now, this is Rachel Perkins, the director of many things, including Bran Nue Dae, which was at the time the most successful film about Indigenous people ever made, and then came the Sapphires, which managed to tip it. Although I think in terms of budget to income, I think the film still stands as the most profitable. Still, with that and with the First Australians documentary series and films such as Radiance and Mabo, which is a very, very good television movie about the Mabo case, the historic Mabo case, Rachel Perkins certainly stands as one of the most important and influential and admired filmmakers in Australia. Now, Rachel Perkins, just to begin, just in all seriousness, I do hope that you regard honesty as a sign of respect. I have to be honest with you about the film, and I will ask you some critical questions about the film once we get into some more general aspects about the film. But I just did want to, because I hate journalists who ambush people, and I'm not one of those people. So I will be asking you some critical questions about the story, which is why I was very keen for Craig to be here. And unfortunately, he's not here, but I did really want him to be here as well for that. But let's just start off by offering you congratulations for making a feature film. I offer congratulations to anybody who actually manages to get a feature film made in this country and get major distribution for it.
Yeah, well, look, I think it speaks to the popularity of the novel, which has, been read by probably millions of Australians now. It was such a loved work, so that's a great base to start from in trying to make a film.
Now, when you say millions of people have read it, were you operating on the well-known theory that, well, not so much theory, but well-known practice that when you make a film from a book, you can't rely on the readers of the book to come see the film in order for it to be a hit, that you have to make the film mostly for those who have not read the book, rather?
Absolutely, because, of course, there's 20 million or so Australians who, haven't read the book. So, of course, you must, the film must be a work in itself and must make sense and have a logic that exists on its own, separate to that of the book. I think having the book is a great start because someone has sat down, created that story, created the characters, and put a lot of effort into creating the whole world. So adaptation gives you something great to start from in having all of that thought and consideration already there. And then I suppose it's really the transference to a screenplay and ultimately a film. Then there's a challenge to stay true to that world that has been created.
Now, what would you say Jasper Jones is about?
I think it's ultimately about empathy, and it's about a young man growing up very quickly, realising the world is not what it seems, but having the empathy to understand other people around him, even though he's very different from them. I mean, I think that's the overall message that we hope people take from this film. Not that it's didactic, but that's certainly one of the strong themes that we're exploring. Well, it's a coming-of-age story, ultimately, and that's the vehicle for the narrative. It has a fabulous murder mystery that begins the story, which, as in the book, hooked me in completely from the start because I want to know who done it. But along the way, there's this coming-of-age story between, as Charlie is the principal vehicle for that, seeing his world and things that aren't what they seem, but there's the relationships that he has with people. Jeffrey Liu, his next door neighbour, who's a Vietnamese Australian boy, his parents, the first love of his life, Eliza, and of course Jasper Jones being the pivotal relationship.
Now, you already have a reputation with your film work and your TV work of taking risks. In this film, you have 3 young people playing the leads. All of them are under 20 years old. Not many directors would go in head first into making a film where the 3 leads are that young. At what point, Rachel Perkins, were you confident that these 3 youngsters could carry the film?
Well, young they may be, but inexperienced they were not. and Gary Rice had done like 4 movies before she came to us, and Levi Miller had come off Pan, and he'd been cast in that role, a blockbuster American film, massive budget, and they would have auditioned thousands of people for that role. So it was his major, cinema. What do you call it? Break, yeah. But, Hollywood certainly thought he was up to the task. When he came to us, he'd done, more ambitious stuff than I've ever done in a film. So, those two came really match fit. Aaron McGrath I'd worked with before on Redfern Now, so I knew that he was up for it. So, yes, they were young people, but they were experienced actors, and I thought they were standout actors. So I didn't see that as a challenge necessarily. Obviously there's other films that you look at, like classics like Stand By Me, which of course I looked at and was hugely popular, which is largely carried by the young cast and in a very effective way. So there was definitely models to look at that we could, review and reassure ourselves that it's all possible.
Now, what was the biggest challenge, do you think, in making the film?
Look, there weren't a lot of challenges, actually. I mean, obviously, budget is always difficult for Australian movies. We, the big Hollywood films shoot for anything between, from, 3 months to a year. We had 6 weeks, but, other lower budget films, Australian films, don't even get that luxury. So it's all relative. But look, we had, a reasonable budget considering, and we had a great cast, and we had, I think, a great book and a great script. So we were ahead of the game.
And in adapting the book to the film, was there a central challenge or essential discipline that you guys had to apply in order for it to work in your eyes as a film?
Yeah, look, I think books are very different stories. That it's an intimate relationship with readers. We had in Jasper Jones, you completely see it from Charlie's point of view. He essentially narrates the book and takes you through the story, and that's one of its beautiful qualities. In the screenplay, of course, you don't have all that narration because you actually have the actors up on screen performing those roles. So from their performance, you can intuit their feelings and their responses. But that said, we did have to make, we had to work on characterization. We had to expand the role that's played by Toni Collette, make her more dimensional, because she's not seen through Charlie's point of view in the film. She's absolutely seen through the audience viewing her. So we had to give her more time and scenes to understand her better. With Charlie, we had to make him generally more active because he's an observer, actually, in the original novel. So those were sort of challenges within the script.
Now, who is the film intended for? Who is the market for the film?
Well, it's for a very wide market, actually. It's for, young people from sort of 12 upward to seniors. I mean, I think that it will cover that sort of demographic. The book had was very popular with women, and students love it. I mean, there's, young boys are actually, young men are very dedicated, avid readers of the book. You can go online and see their attempts at making the trailer and the opening scenes. I mean, they've taken up this book and they really, it resonates with them. And I can understand why, because, coming of age is a thing that we all go through. And so it's universal, therefore, in its sort of appeal. But I'm not sure. The rubber hasn't hit the road yet, so we'll see who goes to watch it, and we'll know that very soon.
And is this intended for international release?
Absolutely. All films hope to go all over the world. For me, I would be very happy if audiences in Australia embrace it, because that's my primary audience that I speak to. Everything else is additional to that.
Okay, now, Rachel, I'm going to tread very carefully here. I've seen the film twice.
Right.
And the reason why I saw it a second time was because I wanted to make sure that when I spoke to you, that I actually was sure about what I was saying in terms of critical opinion. But let me just put this to you. I think one of the issues with the film is tension. Mm-hmm. That the film doesn't build up a big head of steam in terms of tension, because there are these story points in it that question plausibility, that make you keep asking, why is this happening? Why is this happening? I guess the central one would be the issue of motivation. Why does, in 1969, rural Australia, why does this white kid, who's never encountered this black kid before, help him? Why does he go out of his bedroom? Why does he go into the forest? Why does he help him, without giving the story away, why does he help him in this deed that he asks him for absolutely out of the blue? There didn't seem to be sufficient understanding of that character as to why he would help him.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, people take things, people will watch films and take different things from it and have different views, and that's a view you have, and others have raised that with me. My response to that is that, and we talked a lot about that when we were adapting the script, why does this young white kid who has lived this sheltered life decide to go out of his window to help this Aboriginal kid who he knows from, because they grew up in the same town, but it hasn't had contact with him? My answer is that Charlie is full of curiosity, and that's why, in fact, Jasper has picked him. And Jasper's picked him, and Jasper says, you're an outcast like me. You're different, and you're smart, Charlie. And so Jasper has sought him out for a very particular reason, and it's because he thinks that Charlie might see him differently than the rest of the town sees Jasper, which is, the centre of all evil and blame and projection. So I think he sees in Charlie that he's an outcast, that he's a smart kid, and that he might actually consider things differently. So I think it's more that Jasper propels him out of the window, and Charlie sort of goes along with it because he doesn't have anything. He doesn't really have an option. And also he says in the voiceover, I don't even know Jasper, and I wonder what he's really like. So we actually put that voiceover in so that we could show that, Charlie is a curious young man. Yeah. I mean, on his walls in his room, he's got posters of New York, and he's got posters of the solar system. And so his mind is elsewhere.
Another point is a question of physics. They've got the body, and they're disposing of the body. The sticking point is that I found, and that I know that a few others have found, but which I found at both screenings, was they're basically going to put they're going to weigh a body down with a large rock, precariously balanced on the top of her body, and that's going to weigh it down in 4 feet of water or something. It's the rock is going to fall off as the body decomposes, and the body's going to come up to the surface and stink the place out. Yet the body, presumably for the sake of the story, remains hidden under the water, under the weight of a single rock. Again, people are going to watch that. They have seen too many episodes of CSI, of NCIS, of all those other shows about forensics, and they're just going to say, if you're going to weigh a body down in a small body of water, you need to really tie rocks around it. You need to bury that damn thing so deep that no one will ever find it.
Well, a rock was tied to a rope, which was attached
Yes.
to her leg to weight her down. I mean, look, there's a million little things that you could, and I mean, I am the worst critic of the film more than any of you all put together, and I see all its faults. And that's the filmmaker's torture, because if we had luxury and time, we would all go back and remake our films. But I think that those issues that you've raised might be an issue for some people. But in my limited experience to date, people have responded overwhelmingly to the film in a sort of a passionate way that's almost like a phenomena. And we will soon see whether Australian audiences embrace it. But I would say the sum of the experience of watching the film, people are very moved.
I'm just going to raise 2 more points because I don't want it to seem like I'm badgering you, and I'm not going to do that. But again, just 2 more points. One is that at the beginning, when they announced the police search, we are going to search the district, and we're going to have divers going into the river. That little body of water where they put the body is obviously within the district because it's just within walking distance of where they live. How is it that the police don't drag the lake and find the body
then.
It's another.
Yeah, well,
Give us a
it's a for the people who haven't seen the film, it's set in rural Western Australia, and you may not have had the opportunity to be there, but of course on farmlands they have dams, many dams. So that is one of many dams in the area, and the film is set over, I think, like a 72-hour period.
Yep.
So so I'm not imagining that they have checked every dam, in the region, plus the river, with the resources that they have. So I don't think that bothered me, and I haven't had anyone else say that.
Yeah. I guess the other thing too, and again, I'll move on after this point, is the girl Eliza gives him the book, Breakfast at Tiffany's, and puts the note in the book right in front of him. The first thing any kid would have done, especially a kid who's infatuated with the girl who's just given him the book, was that he would have gone home straight away, opened up the book, and checked out what that note said. Surely.
Well, in your view, no one else has raised that with me as an issue, but I mean, he almost reads it when he thinks about her. So he's sitting at his desk and he's thinking about Eliza, and he goes to open the book and potentially read the note. But Jasper Jones comes to his window, and the note indeed falls out, but he picks up the note and puts it back in there. So, I mean, that's a device that we used. But I think the payoff in Eliza, passing the note back to him and her reading it out to the sisters, it's an incredibly powerful scene. I think that there was much to like in this film, and I think Craig Silvey's, I'm not sure whether you read the book, but there's a great scene in which, and I don't want to give it away because it's a spoiler, but it's a great thing that wasn't in any of the book, what actually happens to that note in the end, which has a lot to do with its, the evidence, the confession, and that evidence is destroyed. But so, yeah, there's sort of wonderful things. That note is a little sort of a thing for those who know. It's a clue that sits there, and I think actually you want the audience to want him to open it. You want him to open it, but he doesn't. And, in the movies, those things happen. People take turns, a turn away from a clue, or they turn away from, something that they shouldn't. And, the audience goes, just do it. And they don't do it. And that's part of the lovely torture of murder mysteries and clues.
Are you ready for the Schembri challenge?
What is that?
This is where I pretend to be a big studio executive from America.
Right.
And I come to you and I say to you, Rachel Perkins, I've seen your other films. I think you make lovely little movies. I've seen this Jasper Jones film and I like it. And I want to give you 2,500 screens across America on a major release on condition that I give you another $4 to $5 million. And I want you to make it a bigger story. I want to see more cops in there. I want to see more production in there. I want to see a bigger town. I want to see more of the search. I want to see dirtier cars. I want to see more sunlight. I want to feel that Australian sun. And that's the condition on which I will give you this big deal. What do you say to that?
What's the point of the question, I suppose I would ask?
The question is would you take that, or would you say, no, the film is locked off and the film is what it is?
And what are you trying to get to by asking me that question? What is your question? Is your question, do I value the piece of work that we've made? Or is your question, would I abandon the work that we've done in search of, a wider acknowledgement? Yeah. Is that what you're asking?
No, not abandon it, but I guess change it. I guess build on it. Many filmmakers now, when they get an opportunity, sometimes later in their career, will go back and they will remake scenes. They will redo scenes.
I think in Australia, we don't have the tradition, and we don't often have the resources to redo scenes. And I'm a big fan of having the opportunity to reshoot something or rethink something, but in the way that we organise our schedules, that's not done. In the US, they schedule the film and then they contract all the actors for additional pickups and crew. So you've got that resource to shoot a new ending or shoot a different opening or, shoot something that didn't work. I'm a big believer in that because I think films are so mercurial in their construction. You never know how it's going to turn out, really. You never know whether the scenes ultimately are going to work, but you don't often give yourself the chance to redo things. So in a perfect world, I would arrange my films and schedule them so that could be done.
Two final questions for you. 20 years ago, you couldn't get an audience for a film with Indigenous people in it. That's completely reversed now.
Well, 20 years ago,
what's changed?
Well, 20 years ago, there weren't films with Indigenous people in them that anyone wanted to go and see because there weren't any good films with Indigenous people in them.
You think so? Blackfellas, Fringe Dwellers?
Yeah, but
Short Chains, these were good
Blackfellas
movies.
and Fringe Dwellers were all about Aboriginal people as social problems. And that was really, it was a time that those films were made. But they didn't certainly give me, as a young Indigenous girl growing up, any sort of sense of entertainment or, I just felt like, here's a more dysfunctional Aboriginal people. And that was what was made. And I don't think they were made for a big audience. I think they were made for a sort of political statement. This film is very different. This film intends to entertain people, as did the Sapphires, as did Bran Nue Dae, and it's a maturation. So I don't blame the audiences, actually. I blame the filmmakers and the stories we were telling then.
And when are we going to see the biopic on Charles Perkins?
Who knows, but I hope a really good filmmaker does that work because it probably will only be done once, so I hope they do a good job of it.
Well, I hope they do a good job of it too, and I hope it's a big film, and he was a great person. Rachel Perkins, I want to thank you so much for sitting through this. Thank you so much. I hope that wasn't too awful.
No, I'm still waiting for you to tell me what you liked about the film because you've told me 4 things that you don't like.
You've got young talent in there.
That is my question to you.
You've got young talent in there that is scary. And Gary Rice scares me. She's so talented. And
She's great.
So I think she's terrific. Toni Collette is a national treasure, and I'm glad to hear that you expanded her role because I think she was wonderful in the film. Hugo Weaving, if you could bottle him, you'd sell him. I mean, the guy is just a fantastic actor. So you've got great character pieces in there, so great supporting actors in there. So I enjoyed the film sort of from that point of view as well. And if we had, longer time, I would love to sort of get into that kind of stuff as well. But we have limited time, and I had to sort of ask you, I guess, the most pertinent things, at least, that were on my mind. And I hope I've been fair to you. Sure.
No, I just think that in criticism, which I am, as I said, I'm the biggest critic of my own work, so I'm very happy to explore that. But I think one should also focus on the positives and the things that are great about it. And I think there's a lot of great things about it.
Thank you so much, Rachel.
Thank you.